We're going to be making a round Christmas ornament using an H hook, and for straight yarn, I'm using some new vintage yarn that most likely this company doesn't exist because I'd never heard of it. And it changed names. Apparently it's called Wonder Art. Formerly was Gold Bell. Changed our name, but not our quality. And it's knitting yarn made by 100% DuPont. DuPont. Certification mark, DuPont registered trademark. Means it's made from authentic plastic. Woohoo. All kinds of washing instructions. We don't have that on today's yarn. Also, Needlecraft Corporation of America. So it's made in America at Chicago, Illinois, 60618. So not where Scruff McGruff is, because his was 60652. Emerald green is the color. Made in the U.S., printed in the U.S. The tag alone is pretty interesting. So this yarn is very scruffy compared to the newer stuff just because it is older. Anyways, we're going to start with a magic circle. Where's my end? There we go. And then we're going to start with a chain 2, and this will count as your first double crochet. And I'm going to have a total of 8. So I'm going to do 7 into the circle. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, never really paid much attention to this package. It's kind of interesting. Wish I had a year on it. My guess is possibly 60s or 70s. I have to see when area codes or zip codes came about, and there's no phone number, so we can't use the area code system to update it. Anyways, back to our original thing since I got sidetracked. Alright, we're going to slip stitch to finish out round 1 into the top of our chain 2. Our next round will start with a chain of 2 as well, and they'll start as our first double crochet. In this round, you're going to need 2 double crochets in each stitch for a total of 16. So my first one counts as my chain 2 counts as 1. So there's my second one. So 1 and 2 share a hole. 3 and 4 will share a hole. 5 and 6 will share a hole. 7 and 8 will share a hole. 9 and 10 will share a hole. 11 and 12 will share a hole. Actually, a really pretty green though. 13 and 14 will share a hole. And our last 2 will be 15 and 16, because our round needed to have 16, will share a hole. Now our next round will continue with the increasing of 8. However, we are going to change our stitch. We did finish off our round 2 with a slip stitch, so our stitch will, because we're going to keep these rather small, if you wanted to make them larger, you can continue on with the double crochet. And so chain 1, because this next round is going to be single crochet, so I'm going to, if you do make them larger, you should finish off the round, your final round in a single crochet. It makes a cleaner edge, but that's a choice up to you. So this will follow the a single stitch in a hole, followed by 2 stitches in the hole. Single stitch in a hole, 2 stitches in a hole. So you'll have 24 stitches. So I'm doing single crochet, so it's single stitch and then 2 stitches. So stitch number 1 has its own hole, stitch numbers 2 and 3 share a hole. 4 gets its own hole, 5 and 6 share a hole. So bring it up closer. So 7 gets its own hole. See, there, I'm going under the V. Oops, I just dropped it. Let's try that again. 8 goes into the next hole, goes under the V, and then this is where it came out of. 9 is going to be back into that same hole. 10 gets its own, oops, it's going to keep dropping. 10 gets its own hole. 11 and 12 share a hole. 13 gets its own hole. 14 and 15 gets its own hole. We're counting by threes if you haven't noticed. 16 gets its own hole. 17 and 18 gets its own hole. 19 gets its own hole. 20 and 21 share a hole. 22 gets its own hole. And 23 and 24 share a hole. And you slip stitch to finish this. Now you're going to want to switch to a color you want to use for what is typically the little metal topper with the hanger. I'm switching to a gray, which is more of like a silver. You can switch to just another color. You don't want to switch, you want to keep the same color, that's fine. Let me pull it down. Cut my green off. I like to go over my end so it's less weave in the end. And I'm going to go there we go, tighten it up. 3 half double crochets on this, so that's 1, and they're not sharing any holes, they get their own holes. 1, 2, 3. Chain 1, turn. You're going to slip stitch 2. This just gets you to the center of the 3. So slip stitch 1, slip stitch 2. So now you're in the third, you're in the, the middle. Then you can chain 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You can bring it down. I like to slip stitch through where I pulled out of my first chain, and then you slip stitch back into that middle stitch that you slip stitched last. You're going to slip stitch through all and pull it through whatever loops you went through, and then slip stitch into the final one. And then I like to leave a tail on the long end. Oops, I didn't want to cut right. So that way, these areas where it's kind of misshaped a little bit, I can kind of reshape in it as I weave in my end. So the bottom ones, I just kind of weave back and forth straight. It kind of helps reinforce and stiffen the bottom since it really is just a straight piece. And I crocheted over them, so you really don't need to weave in too much. With the green, since I really don't want to have any more green show up more than it already does there, since I want that to be silver, I usually bring it back down in to where the green is, and that's where I will weave it in. Now, I've made these bigger in the past, but to make this pattern more simpler and a quicker thing, I've made them smaller this round. So you just continue on with making the circles, how you make them. And then you can take an iron on the lower setting and flatten them. It does get rid of the bumpies to it. You can also use some starch. You can spray them down and pin them if you have foam, kind of like that stuff that the ABC foam mats are made out of, that the letters pop in and out of. You might see in like a preschool or toddler room. They make them for quilting. They make them for crocheting, but they're more expensive that way. They also make them as anti-fatigue mats, and you can find them in like tool sections where they're kind of diamond plated. Pretty much all the same stuff, some just a little thicker. The cheapest way to get them is actually the kitty ones with the shapes and stuff. And you just wet the stuff, use sewing pins, and you poke, you get it wet. It doesn't not soaking because it just takes longer, and then you pin them, and then that's how you kind of set it into form the shape if it is a little wonky. And it's just wonky because it's more or less twisting string. It's what knitting, crocheting, and any weaving is in the end. And see how the green gets pulled up. You can not only use this to help strengthen your shaping, but you can weave it to help cover anything where you don't want, where the green might still be showing. I like personally to shapen this out because a lot of times you kind of lose the corners, and this helps. Or you can just weave it straight in. You can weave it in through the crocheted loops. If you want a long, this is roughly 3 fingers, just enough to hang on a branch. If you're wanting to do it something longer, you just chain more than 15. Doing this for something else, you could skip this part altogether and do those metal little ornament hook thingies, or paper clip is the other way I've hung ornaments. Or just take a piece of thread or yarn or whatever, a ribbon, and just attach and tie it. You could skip this altogether. You can, be creative on what you want to do. You go through with some Mod Podge or some Elmer's glue and put a little coat and then sprinkle with glitter. It's really just whatever you want to do, it's creative. Just keep in mind that if you want them to be washable, because you're using them as alternatives for a tree for pets or children, and you're using so that way there were broken things, you want them to be washable. Anything you add, you want to keep in mind your method of washing. The yarn stuff, you can throw in the washer and dryer. Might need a little reshaping with your hands, but it's pretty much wash and go. And there you go. There is your ornament.